when did you first come into contact with Donald Trump?
Well, remember, I'm a New Yorker. I grew up
Yeah.
here. And so my first contact with him, meeting him face to face, I was 31 years old. I was at Goldman Sachs. It was 1995. One of my bosses took me to a meeting with him. And, this people probably won't like me saying this because he's unpopular in your neck of the woods. But at that time, if you were a middle income person like me, a working class person, you looked up to him. He wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. He had this big Trump Tower. He had all these fancy cars and planes. You thought he was rich and you were not. And so you looked up to him, and weirdly, we aspired to be like him. And remember, the rappers wrote a lot of songs about Donald Trump. So, we have now gone from that 31 years ago to the disaster that we're in. But I didn't know him, but I had a big impression of him, and I was excited to meet him 31 years ago. I didn't really develop a relationship with him until he started The Apprentice. I was at CNBC when he was at NBC, and so we had a rapport with each other. I wouldn't call us friends. I think that would be a misnomer of describing the relationship. But then when I worked for Governor Romney in 2012, we got a little closer. We did some business together. We raised some money for Governor Romney. And then by 16, I was with Jeb Bush, and Trump was running, and he asked me to join him if Jeb came out of the race, which I did. And obviously, I've told people that was a mistake for me because it led to this, horrific experience that I had inside the White House. But then again, there's a silver lining, David, because maybe I wouldn't be meeting you if I didn't have that experience. So you have to take the good and bad in life. But if you ask my wife, I've done a lot of stupid things, but working for Donald Trump was probably at the top of the list.
But you didn't work for him for very long, whether or not that was his call or you call.
Well, I
It,
didn't work for him very
it
long in the
was
White House, sir. But remember, I did work for him for almost a year on the campaign. Right? I'm
uh,
not right. I would have never gotten to the White House if I didn't
uh,
work for him on the campaign.
when the cameras are switched off and there's no audience and to know you're in his company, what what's he like then? Is he just the same?
Well, you see, I think people are always surprised by his up close and personal charm.
uh,
I think that you would be blown away that he is excoriating Gavin Newsom on Truth Social and through his tweeting. And then when he's with Gavin, he's very charming and very approachable. And I think people would be blown away at that dichotomy. He's a little bit of a keyboard bully. He's a keyboard warrior. But when you're in your presence, he doesn't really like a lot of conflict. And so even with the journalists that he supposedly despises, he has a pretty good rapport with them privately.